Jesus and the resurrection. Now, to give some background, these two philosophical schools are the only two mentioned by name in Scripture. They represent the two ends of the philosophical spectrum of Greek thought. Now, the Epicureans were, if it feels good, do it. If it feels good, it is good. They sought to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. They weren't all-out hedonists. Their creed would be more something along the lines of commit adultery, but do it in moderation. Epicureans were sophisticated. They were nuanced hedonists. Now, while the ancient Epicureans never fully lived out their philosophical ideas, I'm all too afraid that we Americans live it out on a daily basis. We seek to be happy at all times. We view discomfort and difficulty as things to be eliminated rather than patiently endured. Happiness is pursued at the expense of holiness, and by doing that, we forfeit both. Even death is sanitized. We no longer have funerals, we have memorial services. We no longer even die, we pass away. This manner of speaking doesn't take into account the ugliness of death, the unnaturalness of death. Death was never a part of God's original creation. It was the wages of our sin. And our hope does not lie when our spirits leave our bodies and rejoin God in some ethereal realm above all things. Our hope lies in the resurrection of the dead and the reuniting of our soul with our body, glorified forever. God isn't against matter, He created it. We even co-opt Christianity as a means to justify our pleasure seeking and our pain avoidance. This is foolish at best and blasphemous at worst. Christianity is not about having your best life now. Christianity is not the means to a better life, but the means to a peaceful death. Our entire pilgrimage on this terrestrial ball is a steady march towards eternity. As far as this world goes, none of us are getting out of here alive. While the Epicureans saw life as a random series of events, the Stoics were fatalistic in their thinking. Que sera, sera, whatever will be, was the tune they sang. Now, unlike the Christian doctrine of providence, which has a personal God who sovereignly governs every aspect of the universe so that everything might work together for the good of those who love Him, the Stoics saw fate as an impersonal, cold, and detached, fixed force, even above the gods. In the mind of a Stoic, the best that we men can do is to grin and bear it, to keep a stiff upper lip. The Greek word used here for babbler, which the Stoics and Epicureans both used for Paul, meant seed gatherer. Think of a chicken pecking around for grains and seed and corn. What it meant to convey was that Paul himself didn't have an original idea. He picked and chose from various thinkers and he tried to regurgitate them as if they were his own ideas. Think of some people you know who spend all their waking moments listening to various pundits and talking heads on one of the news channels, and they just parrot those opinions uncritically. That's what they were talking about Paul. And for all the differences between the Stoics and the Epicureans, these opposing factions agreed on one thing: ultimate truth was too elusive for man to ever know. Basically, about the most ultimate and true things, they were agnostic. And it is on this point where Paul was about to prove them very wrong. In verses 19 and 20 read, "Then they took him and brought him to a meeting of the Areopagus, where they said to him, 'May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? You are bringing some strange ideas before our ears, and we want to know what they mean.' All the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent time doing nothing but talking about and listening to something new." Now, to gain some historical perspective, we all know Socrates. He was kind of the father of Greek philosophy, the teacher of Plato, who himself was the teacher of Aristotle. The Areopagus was the council which condemned Socrates to death for his impiety centuries earlier. Also, what is noteworthy about this verse is Luke's little twinge of sarcasm at the end. From watching so many stage or film productions of the biblical narrative, we assume all Bible characters speak in perfect English accents and never utilize irony, sarcasm, or humor. It's far from the truth. We forget we are dealing with flesh and blood authors, albeit divinely inspired ones. Luke here mocks the pretension of the Greeks. The Greeks boast in their great philosophy and wisdom, but they themselves are slaves of intellectual novelty. They're looking for the next big thing. And we Americans do the same thing today. New and improved is a selling point for every product, from a new car, a new computer, to even new knowledge. Seems like every few months, Oprah has on her show a new author with a new haircut or a new goatee selling a new book about a new set of principles that, if properly applied, may have us live our happiest lives ever. Guaranteed. No purchase necessary. If not satisfied, please return the unused portion for a full refund. Shipping charges may apply west of the Rockies, void where prohibited. This cheapening and this commoditization and marketing of truth is not a new phenomenon. Now again, don't mistake me, I'm not a reactionary. Advancements in science and technology, new cures for diseases, new technologies to help us more efficiently utilize our resources, these are welcome things, these are blessings. However, in terms of eternal truth, new is almost always bad. Truth is never old, it is timeless. It's never outdated, it is eternal. Technological innovation may be good, theological innovation is always bad. Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, "Men of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. For I walked around and looked carefully at the objects of your worship. I even found an altar with this inscription, 'To an unknown God.' Now what you worship is something unknown, I'm going to proclaim to you." Speaking of sarcasm, Paul employs some here with his nice backhanded compliment. The word he uses for religious has a connotation meaning something more akin to superstitious, a little gullible. These men of Athens were so religious, in fact, that they hedged their bets with the gods by erecting this altar to an unknown deity. And the Greco-Roman world was much like modern America, powerful, affluent, and above all things, pluralistic. Now, pluralism is a welcome thing in the civic sphere. Freedom of conscience, freedom of religion, these are foundations for our republic, foundations for which I am extremely thankful. However, the equal toleration of a religion under the law does not mean that it is equally valid or true. Likewise, a person's spiritual state is not determined by the sincerity of his or her belief. If Paul were like many modern Christians, he may have told the Greeks, "I call the God Jehovah, you call him Zeus, the Romans call him Jupiter. The point is, we worship the same God. Let's all work together to solve the world's problems." But that's not what Paul says. To make a point and make an illustration, let's move from the theological realm to the physical realm. What if I did not believe in gravity? I really didn't believe it. Unaided human flight was totally possible for anybody at any time. How do I know it's true? Because the thought of soaring through the air makes me feel good on the inside. My favorite song is R. Kelly's "I Believe I Can Fly." I listen to it every day on my iPod. Who are you to say I'm wrong? It's very intolerant of you. It's very closed-minded, arrogant. Well, guess what? If I climbed to the top of the church and jumped off, I'm going to plummet to the ground at around 55 meters per second, give or take with air resistance, and I'm going to hit the ground hard. The sincerity of one's belief in a premise means nothing in terms of the veracity and truthfulness of that premise. Just because we have a right to believe in something doesn't mean our belief is right. So Paul is certainly not complimenting the Greeks' religiosity. He references it merely to critique it. Verses 24 and 25, "The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth and does not live in temples built by hands. And he is not served by human hands, as if he needed anything.